Welcome. My name's Andy Suzanne. Thank you for being here today. Ready, Aim, Retire. This is a workshop that we hope will get you more confident and more prepared for retirement. One of my favorite quotes is, most of us shoot at nothing and hit it with great accuracy. So our goal today is to give you some benchmarks and some guidelines so we are targeting a successful retirement. We have 3 industry experts that are going to share with you their experience in 3 vital categories. Aaron Peterson is a veteran in the health insurance industry. He creates personalized insurance solutions. Aaron grew up in Iowa. He learned the hard way about what hard work was by growing up on a Christmas tree farm. He graduated from the University of Northern Iowa, and he started a company called AKP Health. He will talk to you about a no-nonsense and simplified approach to managing health insurance pre- and post-retirement. Next, Mike Padower is here today. Mike's an author and expert in the long-term care planning arena. Mike's 2nd edition book is here for you today. It's entitled, What's the Deal with Long-Term Care? He has 3 decades of experience in the long-term care, and he's a vital partner with us in each long-term care planning case that we write. Last but not least is one of my colleagues, Ted Smith. Ted's our Director of Investments here at RIA Advisors. Ted works as a technician, an analyst, an investor, and he partners with each and every one of our clients to make sure their investment goals are addressed. I always say it doesn't really make sense for our clients to have all the answers, but it's important that they do know the questions. Everybody approaches retirement with the same questions in mind. Most notably, how and when should I apply for Social Security benefits? How will I handle and pay for increasing healthcare costs? How much do I really need to retire? And what's this whole story about long-term care insurance? Am I really a candidate? We hope to unpack some of those answers for you today.
Thank you very much. My name's Aaron Peterson. I own a business called AKP Health Insurance. And anytime I get 40 people that just want to talk about Medicare, it's very exciting to me. I'm kind of a nerd that way. So thank you for being here. Honored to work with Andy and Tyler and the RIA firm. They are, we think, the world of them and top-notch professionals. And so we're just happy to be part of that. Start off, I'll just tell you, I did grow up on a Christmas tree farm. Sounds very romantic. Wasn't really that much fun, actually. All my friends were having fun and playing baseball and stuff, and I was waking up at 5 a.m. and I was pulling a wagon behind me with little seedling trees and bent over. My dad paid me a penny a tree. Even when I was 5, I knew I was getting ripped off. So, yeah. So anyway, here I am now talking about Medicare. Start off with some trivia. Raise your hand if you know the president that signed Medicare into existence, or take a good guess at it. Lyndon B. Johnson. You win an umbrella on a rainy day.
You can use it today, actually. You're so great. Thank you.
And follow-up question. You can't answer this. What year was it signed into existence? Very good. Wow. We got a sharp crew here. 1965. So very good. Enjoy your umbrella. So we're going to talk about Medicare. Some of this may be redundant for you. Some of you may already be on Medicare. Some of you may be getting ready and trying to prepare for Medicare. There's a lot of ways to do that. Hopefully, when you walk out of this, you say, wow, Medicare is not quite as daunting as I thought it would be. We equate it to building a house. What's the first thing, especially if you're in central Iowa, that you need to build a house? What do you start with? Foundation. Got to have foundation. Got to protect ourselves from those tornadoes, right? So that foundation, well, let me ask you this. Who here started working when they were 14 years old? Okay, 15? Something, 16, everybody started early. 12. Oh, unpaid probably, right? Des Moines, oh, delivering newspapers. Yeah. So my first job was, there used to be a water slide out in Pleasant Hill called Smith Super Shoot, and then it was called Whitewater. Best job I ever had. But I got really excited. I got hired at $3.50 an hour, and I wanted to work overtime. I wanted to make as much money as I could. I worked about 45 hours my first week, and I got that paycheck the first time they had it. I ran upstairs to their office and grabbed my paycheck and took it home in front of my dad. I said, "Dad, I think I made about $135 this week." And he said, "Yeah, just take a look at that." And I said, "Okay." And I opened it up, and then of course it's like 115, or they're like, who took my $20? Medicare did, Social Security did, FICA did, right? So I learned real quick what Medicare was when I was 14 years old, and think, I don't even need to pay into this. I'm not going to need that. I'm 14. Your whole life you've been paying into this system called Medicare. Now at 65, you're entitled to take those benefits. And there is rarely a situation where you would not want to take advantage of Medicare A and B. And we'll talk about C and D because those can be confusing as well. But Medicare A and B is your coverage when you turn 65, or if you continue to work past the age of 65, you may bypass Medicare B or sometimes Medicare A. And you can talk to us about special situations like that if you have them. But then when you retire, you're entitled to those benefits. Medicare Part A is free, and that's for the hospital. Okay? So again, your whole life you paid into it, so free, we'll use that in quotations, but Part A is pretty good on its own. It has a $1,676 deductible right now, and then it pays 100% of your hospital bill after that. There's some, one-off situations, but by and large, if we're just taking Cliff's notes here, $1,676 your obligation, they pay 100%. That's pretty good. Most people that are on health insurance going into the age of 65 are probably paying $5,000, $7,000, $9,000 out-of-pocket maximums. It goes down to $1,676 on the hospital, and it's free. So that's doesn't cost you a dime, and you're entitled to take that. Most people will want to take that when they turn 65, even if they're still on work insurance. The exception to that is, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but if you are contributing to a health savings account, that disqualifies you from continuing to put money into your health savings account. So if that's important and you're going to continue to work, then you might bypass A and B at 65. If you're not contributing to HSA, likely you'll want to take the free Part A and keep your work insurance until you retire, and then go on to Part B. I just said a lot there in a short amount of time. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Don't boo me, please. I'm fragile. I can't do boos. Medicare Part B. Okay, so this is the one that has a premium. For any couple under about $210,000 roughly, you pay $185 a month for Medicare Part B. You can either pay that into the system with a check, or you can have that withdrawn if you're taking Social Security at 65. It'll come right out of your Social Security check. What do you get for that $185? You get outpatient services. That's your doctor visits. That's your outpatient chemotherapy. That's your physical therapy. All those sorts of things. You have a $257 deductible. That's your obligation. And then Medicare Part B pays 80% of your bills after that $257. So A, $1,676 deductible. B has a separate deductible of $257, and then it pays 80%. So most people go, well, that's pretty good. And if all you're going to do is go have $150 doctor visits, what's 80% of 150, 120? You'd owe $30. Pretty good insurance. The issue gets into, I go to Mayo and have $500,000 of outpatient chemotherapy. 20% of $500,000 is $100,000. And if you don't have a Medicare supplement backing that up, you pay that $100,000 out of your pocket. So that's really kind of leads us into talking about Medicare supplements. So Throwing a lot of letters at you, a lot of numbers. Any questions? Okay. So let's talk about, and I swear they intentionally do this to confuse people, but A and B, we got letters, and then we've got supplements they also have letters. So if I say Medicare Part A, I'm talking about the federal government entitlement benefits that you've been paying into. If I talk about Plan G or Plan F, I'm talking about private insurance that you purchase outside of the federal government. Now, the federal government puts out every year, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you're over 65, every year you probably see the Medicare, it's called Medicare and You. It's a thick book. I think it's probably 100 pages. And basically, that's the federal government saying you should really think about buying extra insurance. The nice thing about Medicare supplements is they're standardized. So they're attempting to make it easy for you to shop. So for instance, if you say, hey, I had an agent come out to my house and show me the G plan, every G plan is exactly the same, okay? The coverage is the same. The doctors that accept it are the same. The only difference is the price and the customer service. Medicare and You. Thank you. So don't get too worried about needing, you can look at every plan. I always tell my clients, if you want me to show you every single plan that's available, I will show you every single plan. 99% of the market that's buying a Medicare supplement is taking the G plan. What the G plan does, let's see, I'll come back to this slide. See this here, you see all these check marks. I don't know if you can see that. Every check mark here is checked on the G plan except for one. Anybody read that? Which one? Part B. Part B, what's the Part B deductible? 85. Close. 257. I don't have any more umbrellas, so sorry, I can't. But very good. So what that means is if you have the G plan and you go to Mayo and you run up $1 million of chemo bills, what's your obligation? $257. That's it. The G plan is going to cover that 20% that Medicare is not covering. So pretty darn good insurance, probably the best insurance you'll ever have in your life, the most comprehensive. There are other SKUs here. Go ahead.
I married a younger woman and I have kids that are on my plan. Would they be able to be on that then too?
So the question is, I married a younger woman, have kids, can they be on this plan too? No, you have to be 65 or you have to be on Medicare. Disability is the only time you can get Medicare when you're pre-65. No, so if you came to us, what we would do is show your wife and kids a separate plan, and then we would put you on Medicare. And rarely will it ever make sense to have any other insurance but Medicare and a supplement when you turn 65. There are a few exceptions. Again, if you were offered group insurance, that could be a reason that you would want to stay on there. Although we kind of get, I'd say 40% of the people that come to us that are working past 65 and have group insurance, about 40% of them will still go on Medicare A, B, drop the work insurance. That's not always the case. We can evaluate that for you. If the work insurance is a better deal, we'll tell you. But there are people that are paying a high amount of money on their group insurance that actually Medicare and a supplement is less money and better coverage. So anyway, good question. But yeah, you would have to kind of separate your family out into one plan and then you would go on to Medicare. Okay. So let me just touch on some confusion in the market, which is Medicare C and D. How much time am I at? Okay. So does anybody know what Medicare C is? Okay. If you ever wake up on Sunday morning and you flip on ABC, CBS, you see those infomercials. Is it Joe Theismann? Joe Namath. I'm not going to disparage Joe Namath, but I think he's taken a few concussions, and I don't know if I would necessarily. Medicare Advantage is a program that came out around George Bush II. And what it does in general is Remember that A and B we talked about. When you sign up for an Advantage plan, you're signing up for what's called Medicare Part C. Now, it's run by private companies that are supposed to be interpreting Medicare rules. But what we run into anecdotally is oftentimes they're very attractive on paper. I'm biased here. We don't do Medicare Advantage plans. There's a lot of people in the market that want them and have them, and that's fine. We have kind of some thoughts on that. And the biggest one is when you join a Medicare Advantage plan, you're sort of signing away your rights to Medicare A and B. You still pay that money each month for B, but then Humana or Wellmark or one of these companies becomes your primary caregiver. And the problem is networks. What you're doing is shrinking the networks that you can see. Now, there are PPO plans, okay? But I'll give you an example. The Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona won't take a Medicare Advantage plan. So now they used to. So let's say you turned 65 and you had cancer. And like a lot of Iowans do, you moved down to Arizona, or at least spent half your year in Arizona. And you said, I'll just get my treatment there. You can't get your treatment there because they don't take it. So you say, oh, well, I'll just switch. You can't. So you get one get out of jail free card when you can get into a traditional Medicare supplement, that G plan. That is 6 months before you turn 65, the month of, and 5 months after. You have an 11-month window when you can take any Medicare supplement plan you want with any company, any agent you want, and they can't ask you any health questions. So if you forget everything I say today, just remember you have that 11-month window. Now, if you're taking Medicare after the age of 65, that window is when you're taking Medicare Part B. So let's say you work to 67 and you stay on your work insurance, and then you say, hey, on my 68th birthday, I'm going to go retire and I'm going to go to Medicare A and B. The trigger of that 11-month window is when you take Medicare B. Does that make sense? No health questions can be asked. You can be, God forbid, you could have a terminal illness and they have to accept you, okay? Now, let's say you took, instead of taking traditional supplement, you took a Medicare Advantage plan. You said, well, gee, this is free and I just pay $30 to go to the doctor and my doctor accepts it. Yeah, that's all true, okay? But mostly we don't buy insurance to go to the $150 doctor visit because we're not going to be wiped out financially by a $150 doctor visit. What we might be wiped out financially by is $1 million of chemo at Mayo. So try to keep that lens, and the problem is you're giving up some access to doctors. Almost every doctor in the country accepts Medicare, traditional Medicare. A portion of them will take a Medicare Advantage, but a lot of them will take some and not the other. And so you just get yourself into a situation there. If you take traditional Medicare and a supplement, A, B, and like a G plan, and then you decide 20 years later you want to go to an Advantage plan, they don't ask you any health questions. Okay? You can always switch to an Advantage. You can't always switch back to traditional Medicare. So typically what we're saying to our clients is, if $109 a month for a G plan isn't disrupting your life, let's stay conservative and give yourself options. And then, gosh, if 15 years from now you want to go to a Medicare Advantage, or next year you want to go to Medicare Advantage, you can always do that. Just understand the repercussions. Once you do that, you may not be able to go back to traditional Medicare. And Kelly and I, a lot of times what we'll see is people that go on to Medicare Advantage, treating them just fine. They're paying their copay and going to the doctor. Oh, I need a hip surgery. We had a woman that walked into our office last year on an Advantage plan, needed a hip surgery. She knew she needed it for quite some time. She had to go through so much red tape. By the time that she actually, the Advantage plan said she could go have the hip surgery, the surgeon said, well, it's calcified to a point we can't do surgery. That doesn't happen on traditional supplements. You're not jumping through those hoops. The way those Advantage plans interpret Medicare is just different. It's not supposed to be, but it is. So I'm a little bit biased. You'll probably talk to somebody else that'll just glowingly talk about them, but that's my perspective on the Medicare Advantage plans. So any questions on Medicare C? Medicare C is Medicare Advantage. And then you've got the last thing is what's called Medicare Part D. D is for drugs. They make that one easy. So if you go on to traditional Medicare, A, B, and a supplement, then you're going to want a D for drugs plan. Now, last year, there was significant legislation that capped your max out of pocket to no more than $2,000 on drugs. So you could be taking a $5,000 a month drug as long as it's an approved Medicare drug. You will never pay more than $2,000 in a year for your prescriptions. For a lot of people that are on generic prescriptions, probably the plan that they want to take is about $4 a month. Comes out of their Social Security check. They cut agent compensation on those. Most of them don't pay any agent compensation. So it's a little bit sometimes challenging to get somebody that wants to talk to you about a Part D. One thing, just a shameless plug for us, if you're doing business with us, if you're getting your supplement, we're going to help you shop that Part D drug plan every year. October 15th through December 7th, so tomorrow through December 7th is what's called the annual enrollment period, where you can shop your drug plan. You can also disenroll from an Advantage plan during that time. Okay. Supplements, you don't have to do anything. Once you're on a supplement, you can change it every month if you want. There's no prescribed time. Just remember, if you're outside of that initial get out of jail free card, you might have to answer health questions. Okay? I know, I'm throwing a lot at you. You guys are absorbing it well. Before I move on from Medicare, I just want to, is there any other, there's no dumb questions here, so if something's like, Aaron, you contradicted yourself, or something's not making sense, just probably it's confusing to somebody else as well. Anybody have anything?
What was that 5-month get out free?
It's an 11-month get out of jail free card. It starts 6 months before you go on to Medicare B. For a lot of people, that's 65, 6 months before they turn 65, or it could be whenever your retirement date is. 6 months before, the month of, and then 5 months after. And you would never probably want to wait till after, but it is for people that forget or whatever. Mostly, we try to start talking to people 6 months before. You can set all that up. You can actually purchase your Medicare supplement without paying any money right away and have that set up for 6 months from now and just cross one thing off your list. Good question. Anybody else? Okay. Couple things, and then I'll turn it over. So, who knows right now in Des Moines, Iowa, what's the average cost to live in a nursing home?
11,000.
It's a pretty good guess. 11,000 was the guess. If it's memory care, it's probably up in the 11, 12. If it's just assisted living, you're probably 6 to 8. Full-fledged nursing home, if they got fancy fountains out front, it might be 14 grand a month. And believe me, those fountains don't necessarily mean that it's a nicer place. I have a mother-in-law that's in memory care right now, and what we've found out from touring, and maybe some of you are, if you've been a caretaker, you know this, it's about the people inside that place more than anything. That's really, at least that's my what I've concluded. So you're going to hear all about long-term care strategies, and please listen because there's some great material coming after this. But as a first line of defense, what we have shown our clients is what's called home health care insurance. Who here has gone to work not feeling their best? That's an Iowa ethos, right? Like, you suck it up and go to work if you got the sniffles. I planted trees when I had the flu. But the point of that is, if you think about, okay, I'm at work. Kelly was a teacher, teaching 6th graders. You got a headache, you got kids screaming. What's going through your mind when you're feeling like that? Where do you want to be? What? Yeah, you want to be asleep at your home. Why do you want to be home? Think about it. Why does our brain send an impulse saying, get home? When we're at home, what's there? Comfort, peace, hopefully somebody that likes you and will take care of you a little bit. So your brain's trying to help you recover, right? And that's what home health care does, is it sends you where you have the best chance of recovery. And so that's kind of a first line of defense. We still recommend listening very strongly to long-term care options because this isn't the end-all be-all. But for a lot of folks, this is a first line of defense to keep them in their own home as long as possible. It will pay up to $500 a day for people to come into your house and take care of you there rather than you go into a nursing home. Now, there are situations where they can't keep you at home anymore and you'll have to go. But if we can elongate that window of time when you're in your own home, you got a better chance of recovery and you're saving 10 to 12 grand a month of long-term care costs that are not covered by Medicare. Okay, so just wanted to plant a seed on that. We have, if you're interested, we have handouts up here on both the Medicare and the home health care. Also have some pizza cutters here for you, so when you're eating pizza, think about us. And some cards too. And then dental insurance. I'm a little bit jaded on dental insurance, just to be frank with you. Dental insurance it can be fine to use for day-to-day things. Most of them have a cap, $1,000, $1,500. There's some out there that have a $5,000 cap, but there's a lot of red tape there. I love insurance for what it's good at, which is covering catastrophic losses. These dental insurance, they know you're going to use it, right? And they price it in a way where they usually come out ahead. And you want your insurance company to make a profit, okay? Because they got to be able to pay your claims, right? So the dental, there's a couple good products that we represent that we like that you got a pretty good chance of coming out on the plus side and getting ahead of the insurance company if you use it properly. But I'm probably the worst insurance salesman you'll ever see when it talks about dental insurance because it's all kind of a game. There's a couple good plans though we can show you. And if you're staring down the barrel of thousands of dollars of work over the next 5 years, there's some plans out there that'll be helpful. It's probably the least important part of that insurance portfolio. The med sup, the home health care being the most important. Yes?
Is there any ones that cover implants?
There are some. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. They
$11,000 and $15,000.
They'll put a dent in that. They'll put a dent in 11 or 15. It'll be worth the premium, but they're going to put you on a waiting period before they pay. You can't just sign up and go get your implant.
Sure.
You're going to have probably a 12 to 24 month waiting period, and then they're going to pay a percentage with a cap. Okay. But yeah, if you know you're going to do that and you can plan it out a year or two, having dental insurance will be beneficial, but it's by no means going to pay the bill for you. It's just going to knock some of it off. Good question. So this is me. This is how to get a hold of me. Again, take a card. If you have any questions at all, happy to answer them. We have an office over in West Des Moines near Dowling High School and the Walnut Creek Y. We love people. We love helping people. Kelly was a teacher for 18 years. She feels like she's still getting her fix. Lori, who's sitting in the 5th row there, is one of our advisors as well. Just the best people, and they understand what you're going through. So, if you have questions, call us. Even if it doesn't end up you doing business with us, we want to put you in a good place. So, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. I always like to start this presentation with some perspective. That's not the perspective, that's the fun stuff. You've heard a lot today about healthcare and retirement, and we're going to keep going with that topic. But what we're going to talk about today is how to implement some of these strategies potentially into financial planning at the individual level. So some of these things are really potentially going to make your financial planning far more effective. But I always like to start with some perspective. So Andy won't admit to it, but Andy was back here on the left there. I like to start with a perspective on life expectancy, okay? In 1776, when the Declaration was signed, life expectancy was 36. By the end of the Civil War, it had grown to 42. We implemented Social Security in 1935, okay? Life expectancy was 62. What's retirement age effectively? 65. So we implemented Social Security for? I see dead people. 6 cents? Yeah. Okay. We talked about 1965, the implementation of Medicare. Life expectancy had grown to 68. Okay. Life expectancy at that time at 68 had 10 million beneficiaries on Medicare. Today we're approaching 70 million. Okay. So we had 3 years of expected care for 10 million people, right? Today, we're approaching age 80 with 70 million. So we need to remember what the systems were designed to do and not to do, and this is a big part of it, is recognizing life expectancy has something to do with that. Here's the next part of it. When did Magic Johnson die? You sure? Positive?
Unless he did it today.
Diagnosed HIV positive November 7th, 1991. That was a death sentence in 1991. True or not? Yes. Magic is alive and well, and so is anyone else who has HIV at this point, because we've learned how to treat it. Okay? So things that used to kill us don't. Sometimes things that should kill us don't, and we end up needing what? A certain level of care. Christopher Reeve sat in that chair for 9 years, requiring nearly around-the-clock care. Okay, so we have two extremes that you kind of see here. We're going to talk about what long-term care actually looks like in a minute. But in general terms, with life expectancy pushing age 80, illness and disease that used to end life doesn't. When we get old, we get sick. When we get sick, we need care. When we need care, it can be expensive. Okay, so that's fact number 2. So as we look at long-term care, we look at health care and retirement. Number 1, it's time to educate yourself as you approach retirement and think about retirement. Number 2, understand your planning options. You've learned about some of them already. Number 3, ask and answer the right questions. We'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about selecting the appropriate options and strategies that fit you and your family's needs. So when we talk about this, you've already seen so far that Medicare is not free, okay? You've been paying for it all of your life. You start paying for Part B premium, Part D premium. So let's get it out of your mind there's a cost for these things. Next, we have to define what long-term care is and how it's delivered. We all know if I say, what is long-term care? You're going to say, well, it's home health care, community-based care, assisted living, nursing home. Let's change the question. What is long-term care? Okay? This morning, you got out of bed, you didn't soil your sheets. You went to the bathroom, you took a shower, you got dressed, you moved yourself to the kitchen, and you ate breakfast. You did the activities of daily living. The reverse is possible. Someone has to change your sheets, someone has to put you on the toilet, in the shower, get you dressed, move you to the kitchen, and feed you your breakfast. That is long-term care. That is not covered by Medicare. And that's why we're having this discussion. It's right there on the website. I don't make this stuff up, okay? Medicare.gov, what's not covered, right at the top. Long-term care, custodial care. So we have to get these ideas into everyone's head that there's not some surprise that's coming when you get to retirement. It's actually in the book too. We'll get to that. There's only one place that you can go to get your actual Social Security expected income. Ted will guarantee that I'm right about this. It's ssa.gov. You log into the website, okay? Do your governmentid.com or whatever it's called. You log in and it'll show you all the different numbers based on your IRS inputs to ssa.gov, and it shows what that expected income is in retirement for Social Security. You scroll down under Medicare, it says what? Medicare does not pay for long-term care, so you may want to consider options for private insurance. It's not Andy telling you this. It's not your financial advisor. It's Medicare. Okay? Next, we look at what planning options might look like. Okay? So we have to consider where we are. Okay? The appropriate supplement, as you've heard this morning. Estate and elder law planning, that you have to have the proper legal framework for all of these things. All this planning is useless if the event occurs and you can't tell people what you want. and how you want it and where you want it and when you want it. That's what the legal framework does. And finally, potentially a long-term care plan to cover some of those expenses that Medicare, health insurance, and a supplement won't cover. Okay? He showed you a nice chart about all the different plans for Medigap coverage. I kind of reconfigured it about 5 years ago because here's your reality for long-term care and Medicare supplements. Does that hit home? Just a little kind of reality check, okay? We move on and we're going to talk about the evolution of long-term care planning a little bit, okay? And I'm moving quickly, but I promise I'll share all of this stuff if you want the slides to review it. The biggest thing about long-term care planning is addressing or eliminating the potential burden on loved ones. It's addressing the missing piece in a comprehensive financial plan. It's beginning to recognize your true asset allocation that you haven't considered with this topic. And it's beginning to take control to maintain independence and choice if and when the need arises. And finally, the ability to create tax-advantaged or tax-free dollars to address this need in the future, okay? He talked about it briefly. The last thing that you want to do when you're 70 years old is start taking lots of income out of your retirement plan, because then you get introduced to Aunt Irma. Does anyone know who Aunt Irma is? No? IRMAA. I forget what it stands for. You probably know right off the top of your head. Income related. You don't remember?
No, I don't.
All right, that's okay. Aunt Irma is a nasty woman, okay? The more income you make, the more you're going to pay for Part B and Part D. So anytime you hear someone say we should means test Medicare, they don't know about Medicare because it's already means tested, okay? It's important to recognize. So let's talk about long-term care insurance and why and what things have happened recently that make it an interesting discussion. If I stood up here, what month are we in? October? Okay. If I stood up here in June of 2008, anybody remember what happened in 2008? A little bit? Okay. If I stood up here in June of 2008, because the crash happened in August, and I looked at you and I said, in 3 months, Merrill Lynch, Countrywide, Washington Mutual, Bear Stearns, and Lehman Brothers are going out of business. Wow. Straitjacket? Carry me out in a straitjacket? That's what you're thinking, right? Guess what? It happened. And because that happened, we had near 0% interest rates for more than a decade. The insurance companies that sold long-term care insurance were dependent upon those interest rates to maintain rates and solidify their standing, okay? When I got into this business in 1991, there were 112 companies selling long-term care insurance, standalone LTCI. Today, there are effectively 9. Why? That was a big part of it. Interest rates collapsed. Number 2, Magic Johnson and Christopher Reeves. People living longer and having longer claims. And finally, people holding on to these policies for a very, very long time. The lapse ratio, or the number of people buying a policy and letting it go, was supposed to be 5 to 6%, and it's not near about 1%. So all of those factors contributed to insurance companies going, we can't do this because we haven't priced it right, okay? That created a growing set of products that's more consumer-oriented you're going to learn about today, okay? So when you think about long-term care from a risk management standpoint, these are the 5 different ways that we can address it, the long-term care piece, okay? We can look at traditional long-term care insurance. We can look at hybrids built on the back of a life insurance policy. We can look at life insurance with certain riders that give access to LTC. We can look at annuity hybrids. We can look at annuities with income kickers for confinement. That's the high level. We're not going to get into specifics, at a granular level, but that's important to understand that we look at this model as being what we offer the consumer today. The biggest thing that I want you to take away as a consumer today is this is a process, not a product. okay? And when you go through the process, you're trying to identify appropriate planning solutions to improve or complement your financial planning. That's it. Does it make sense? So we have to do a couple of things. We have to quantify the risk. We have to identify how and where those services are provided. We've talked about that already. We have to talk about what's the most appropriate solution for your financial planning. And when we begin to do that, we have to define the need, okay? Now, this is going to sound very esoteric and kind of get in the weeds, but it's important to see where we were and where we are today. This is statistics from 2005. Does anyone drive a car that's from 2005? You don't.
Before 500.
Oh my goodness. Okay. There goes that. There goes.
165,000 miles.
All right. Well, there goes my example. So she's still going to use the stats and justify it. That's okay. We used to use this chart and say the average need for care is 3 years. Okay. 2.2 years for a man, 3.7 for a woman. Why do men use long-term care less? They die sooner. Why do men die sooner? They want to. Thank you. Okay. That's the stats. Okay. That was 2004. Okay. Now, have I ever met you before?
No.
Okay. I'm going to explain the law of averages the best way I can. Based on the law of averages and the fact that I've never met you before today, I can tell you that by the law of averages, half of everyone you know is a below average person. See where this is going?
Yeah, I do.
See what happens when you use averages? Are you ever going to be right? Almost never. Okay? So we've evolved our long-term care planning practice for advisors to use what we call HALO. Okay? HALO uses millions of data points to define the need for clients. Okay? Location, lifestyle, family dynamics, health history, to give an accurate projection of what care will look like for that individual, okay? Does anyone ever go to DSM without a ticket and say, hey, I'm going on vacation? No. You know what your destination is before you go to the airport. We need to do that with your financial plan with respect to the long-term care planning piece. And that's how HALO works, okay? We'll see it in more granular detail momentarily. But basically, it projects lifespan, it projects how much care is needed and when that care is going to occur, and it allows us to do some planning and not guessing. So as we do that, we begin to ask the right questions, okay? Number one, for all of you here, I know the answer to this question. What percentage of your assets are currently allocated to pay for healthcare expenses in retirement not covered by Medicare? Anyone want to answer it? Until you qualify for Medicaid, every dollar you have in every account that you have in every bank account and financial institution is right now currently allocated to pay for health care and retirement. I'm not going to argue with you. It's just a fact. That's the basis of this discussion. Where is your model fit with respect to addressing this situation? Okay. Number two, if you needed care, which of your assets would you tap first to pay for that care? We have to identify the pay for account that we all have to have, mentally, figuratively, whatever that's going to be. Okay. But in reality, there are 6 non-qualified accounts, accounts that have already been taxed. Qualified accounts, accounts that have not yet been taxed. Excess income from cash flow, life insurance cash values, annuity cash values, home equity or reverse mortgage. These are the only 6 places that you can pull from to be that pay for account. So then the question becomes, is that current location the best place to address this, or can we do some interesting things with it? Okay? And you have to begin to ask yourself, how much do I want to pay for every dollar of care when I need it in the future? Do you want to pay $1.40 or $1.20 pulling it out of your investment account? Why is it $1.20, Andy? Taxes. Sorry, I should have set that up better. That's all right. Okay, capital gains taxes. Best case scenario, for every dollar of care you need, you're pulling out $1.20. Retirement account, might be $1.33, might be $1.25, could be $1.40, couldn't it? With state and federal taxes, every dollar of care will be $1.40. Money market account, cash savings, $1 for dollar. Okay? How many of you are smart? How many of you like paying things at a discount? Why do we go to Costco? Why do we go to Walmart? Why do we go to Target? So we can pay 33 cents for every dollar of value that we see. This is long-term care planning. Okay, in a little bit different view. So, how have we defined how Medicare and Medicaid fits? We haven't talked about Medicaid yet. We'll talk about that briefly. How do we quantify the future care needs? We use a HALO or some tool like it. Have we considered tax-advantaged ways to pay for long-term care in the future? Now we begin to have the rubber hit the road, so to speak. And let's just look at some quick case studies, okay? But before we do, that Medicaid slide, I think I took it out because I was doing something and thinking that Medicare would cover that. Do we all know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid? Show of hands, who knows what Medicaid is? Okay, if you qualify for Medicare, do you automatically qualify for Medicaid? No, okay? Medicaid is if you have limited assets, limited income to pay for certain aspects of healthcare and retirement, or if younger, other things, okay? So you have to remember that in order to qualify for Medicaid, what do you have to do? Essentially, you're going on welfare. Number two, if you have honkus to the bonkus, anyone ever heard of that? No? You're 82 years old, you have honkus to the bonkus, you're a female, okay? And the only facility that'll take someone with honkus to the bonkus is in Cedar Rapids. Where are you going? Not the place around the corner that you know and love, that you visited, because guess what? They don't have a Medicaid bed. Okay? We're going to get into this in a moment, I think, as well. Actually, I took this slide out. Who's heard the term silver tsunami? In 12 weeks, the first baby boomer turns 80 years old. In 3 years, the last baby boomer turns 65, at which time 1 in 5 Americans will be over the age of 65, going through and into retirement together. Do you think that long-term care is going to be the same 5 years from now as it is today? Do you think the facility that has a Medicaid bed today will have a Medicaid bed 5 years from now? Do you think we can legislate around the law of supply and demand? This is just a reality check. I'm not here to give you any other information. I'm not giving you crazy statistics. I'm just talking about the fact that in 1946, we started building hospitals to do what? Birth children. We built elementary schools, junior highs, high schools, suburbs, universities. Now what are we building? Do you know there's more adult daycare facilities in the Clearwater area than there are children's facilities? Think about that for a second. Does anyone here go to Costco? Yeah. Go look at the diapers and what's right next to the diapers. Big section. You know there's more adult diapers sold in Japan and Germany today than there are children's diapers? That's called the silver tsunami. That's where we're headed. So let's talk about some of these things, some of these ways to approach long-term care in your financial planning. And I'm not going to talk about anything specific product-wise, but just generalities. Let's talk about Betty Boomer here, okay? Betty's identified her pay for as $200,000 in CDs and bank account dollars that she's got. Low risk, low yield. She's got a pension, Social Security, wants to pass on some money, hopefully, to her grandchildren, okay? So what are we going to do? We're going to show her an asset-based life long-term care plan, or a hybrid as we call it. Okay. Now remember, $200,000 is her pay-for account. Okay. Have you ever heard of MIT in Cambridge? We have a community college in St. Louis where I grew up called Merrimack Community College. Everyone just called it Merrimack in town. I went to that MIT. Okay. I didn't go to Cambridge, but I do know that $200,000, okay, is our number. Now, if she needs care that costs $5,000 a month, how long will $200,000 last? 40 months. Okay? Now, if we look at Betty and Betty has a need for care that's 5 years, how are we doing? Not good, are we? Is that better? If we can take $119,000 out of that 200 and provide 48 months or 4 years instead, have we improved her position? Okay. Did we spend her money? Look down here, the cash value that we have in that plan. No, we didn't spend her money either. We moved it from here to here. See that $120,000 right there? That's what her family gets back if she doesn't need care. How do these dollars come out to pay for care when she needs it? Tax-free. Doesn't get hit by Aunt Irma. So what have we done? We've effectively just repositioned, reallocated, moved from pocket to pocket enough money to do what? Turn $200,000 today, and when she needs care 25 years from now, into $500,000 available for care tax-free. That's one way that we can approach long-term care planning. Very, very effective, okay? Let's look at Sally. Sally's 55 years old. She doesn't have a big amount of money sitting in a bank account, but she was recently divorced. She's got some income and alimony. She wants to be done paying for a plan when she's 70 years old. So hypothetically, we're going to show her the same thing, but we're going to pay for it every year, okay? So the same situation, what we've done is we've looked for her and said her extended care need is going to be 5 years. This is what the halo looks like, okay? And it says that she's going to need 3 years of home health care, a year of assisted living, and a year of nursing home care. And it's small, so that's what it says it's going to cost in today's dollars. Okay? Now, if she takes what she's making now, she doesn't have a plan, she just has some income. Okay? But if we take some of that income that she's receiving and we turn that into a long-term care plan, look what we have when she turns in 30 years when she's going to need care at 85. $1 million will be available in tax-free benefits to cover that 60-month need. And what happens if she doesn't use it? All the money comes back to her family in the form of a death benefit. And how do the dollars come out to pay for care? Tax-free. See a theme here? The newlyweds. 75 years old, okay? Second marriages. They would pay for care with $150,000 they have in an existing annuity, okay? I don't care what you hear on TV, annuities are not evil, okay? Who knows what the first actual stock issuing company was on the planet? East India Trading Company, okay? 1500s, 1600s, I forget the date exactly. Who knows when the annuity was created? Roman Empire. It was called an annua. That's what they paid the soldiers. So if annuities suck, they've sucked a lot longer than stock certificates. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, this couple has a $100,000 cost basis in their annuity. That means the annuity, they had a CD that came due at Bank of America. Bank of America put it into a fixed annuity. Today it's worth $150,000. Okay, so we're going to talk about an annuity-based long-term care plan. But before we do that, we have to realize that because of that gain, because of that $50,000, they only really have $137,500. Why? Because we call LIFO accounting, last in, first out. Withdrawals from annuities come out gains first. Okay, so we really only have $137,500. Now, I didn't go to MIT and Cambridge, but I do know that $137,000 is less than $461. Because if we take $150,000 and we use what we call a Pension Protection Act compliant solution today, we can turn $150,000 into $461,000 of LTC benefits day one. How do those come out? Tax-free. All of them. So we've turned a taxable gain into what? A tax-free long-term care benefit. Okay? Anyone here do real estate? 1031 exchange? No? Okay, we do what we call a 1035 exchange, a like-for-like exchange of an insurance product. Life to life, life to annuity, can go both ways. We can take insurance dollars that are in annuities or life insurance and turn it into long-term care benefits. Okay, number one. Now, the best thing about this is we can turn it from a single life, because it was one of their annuities, and now this is shared 90 months of care for both of them. Very interesting concept. The Pension Protection Act was part of a congressional bill in 2006. In 2010, this became active for long-term care planning purposes. Very, very, very powerful stuff. We're going to skip this one. This one isn't exciting, and we got to get some moving here a little bit. Okay, this one's fun. Okay, Charlie and Carol Cash are 70 years old. Some of you may know about this topic, some of you may not. Who knows what an RMD is? Okay, required minimum distribution. Okay, Uncle Sam will let you defer income tax on IRAs, SEPs, simple 401k plans, but at a certain point, at age 73, those dollars have to come out. Okay, so much so that if you don't take it out, there's a penalty. Anyone know what the penalty is? 50% of what you didn't take. Okay? Now, they have $750,000 in untapped IRA dollars, okay, that they haven't taken out yet. So in 3 years, they have to do what? Start pulling that money out. It's not an option, okay? So then you sit here and say, well, how much is it? Okay? There's an easy back-of-the-napkin approach. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. A marathon is how far? 26.2 miles. Take 750 divided by 26.2, you're real close. Okay? Think about that for a moment. We're going to talk about an IRA-funded long-term care plan. Why? Because they've got that money sitting there. It's not been tapped, but it's going to have to be in 3 years. Okay? So we're not going to talk about all 750. We're just going to talk about 250,000 of those dollars. Okay? Now, if they're not taxed and they need to be paid, they need to be used for care, they're going to have to pay taxes. So again, that's about 187.5 would be the net number. Okay? Here's another interesting fact. If they don't use those dollars and they pass on to the beneficiary that happens to be non-spousal, what happens? Within 10 years of their death, they have to be what? Pulled out by the beneficiary, who are then going to have to pay what? Taxes. Okay, keep that in mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that $250,000, we're going to start an income stream at about $29,000 per year. Okay? And remember, this is money that has to come out of that account anyway very soon. So we're going to turn $250,000 into $759,000 of assets available for care for two 70-year-olds. This isn't 50, this isn't 45. We're tripling the value of this piece of their retirement dollars to pay for what? Long-term care. How does that come out? Tax-free. How does the death benefit go to their heirs if they don't use it? Tax-free. Do they have to take out the $29,000? Someone have a calculator real quick. Do 750 divided by 26.2. $28,600 has to come out anyway. We've taken an extra $1,000 over their RMD. We are taking dollars that have to come out of a retirement account, moving them into the other pocket right here, and creating leverage if and when you need care. And if you don't, we're giving your beneficiaries a much better place than where they're at right now with that 250 grand sitting in a retirement account. There are a lot of things that you can get into from here as far as the elder law perspective, the estate planning perspective, but I just wanted to give you a good overview of how you can look at long-term care planning. These guys are great because they recognize how some of these things work inside of a financial plan, and I just help them do that because I'm the LTC geek. So any questions? I went through all that pretty quickly, or at least tried to.
Are we going to get handouts?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I'll send you the slide deck.
On your way out, make sure if you didn't sign in, we'd like to know you were here for compliance reasons, and more importantly, in that regard, will you leave your email address? And yes, we'll send your Mike's presentation to each and every one of you.
And who's the attorney?
Jeff Steer. We have a couple attorneys here, and
Where's Jeff?
where'd Jeff go? Jeff
Okay.
had to step out.
Here's a great question. Just to give you this just one perspective piece here. What do you call an estate plan without a long-term care component? Fiction. Okay. Remember that. If you need care, when you need care, if it's not in your estate plan, where are those assets going? Government, nursing home, okay? If you don't have those documents in order, okay, real quick question that any of you can answer. Who's your durable power of attorney? Because if you don't have one, Andy can't take a call from your daughter to say we need to liquidate $17,000 a month to pay for nursing home care. Why? She can't access your account. Does anyone in here have a house with no mortgage? No mortgage. Okay, keep your hands up. Let me see something. How many of you canceled your homeowner's policy? Are all the hands still up? That's the reality. Now, if I went and did a lot of the other, showed you some of the statistics and things like that, you've got a 2% chance of having a severe car accident over age 65, or 2% chance of having your home burned down, 15% chance of having a severe auto accident. And as far as long-term care goes, somewhere between 50 and 75%, depending on male or female. Where's your insurable risk?
Thank you, Mike.
So this is in two parts, and the first part we call My Plan After 50. As you get to age 50, there needs to be a plan getting developed for how you're going to transition to retirement when you do, whether that's, call it financial independence, but when you can slow down at work or change jobs to do something you enjoy more, or quit altogether to do things you enjoy all the time. But the thing is to not run out of money before you run out of breath. I don't have the clicker. Here it is. First time I've used one of these. So 3 phases of your retirement, your investment life. You accumulate, so you build it up, then you have to transition to distributing it, and then when your retirement ends, whatever's left gets transferred on to your heirs or your beneficiaries. And during each of those phases, you need to use different tools to get the most out of that phase. I'll go pretty quick because it's been, y'all have been very attentive. So your parents' generation, most of them had pensions and then Social Security, and they could depend on that for their retirement income, so their investments weren't as important to having a good retirement. But that has changed for most of us. Some of us are still very lucky, blessed to have a pension, but that's not a lot of us. Social Security is still important for all of us. And then, so your investments make up the biggest part of your retirement. So two key questions we want to answer. What do you need your retirement income to do, and what do you want it to do? Separating needs from wants with your cash flow is really important. So the need, we want to find out what can you not do without in retirement. You gotta have food, you gotta have a place to live, you gotta have electricity. Most of us have to have internet. So got to pay your property taxes, as was talked about. You got to have your homeowner's insurance, right, as Mike just said. So those are your needs. You want to add those up and know what your needs budget is, and that's your paycheck. You need a paycheck to cover that once you stop earning a paycheck. And then we want to know what your wants are. So that's your playcheck. What are you going to have fun with? Okay, now some people have told me that they had an affliction that needed to be under the needs categories. It was GOLF. Someone else told me, and I don't think they're in this room, so that told us that they have a need called watching the Green Bay Packers play at Lambeau Field, right? So anyway, so needs and wants are dependent on you and your goals. But so when you have needs, we want to cover them with protected sources of income to make sure they're covered. And so in our industry, the only thing we can say guaranteed about is annuity income, or maybe life insurance. Somebody correct me on that. But it's really, you can look at different ways to protect your income, okay? That doesn't use that, but we'll get into that. So Social Security, you all know about it, so that's a big deal. Pensions, not many of us have it. Annuities, that's the last way we can provide guaranteed income. So back to Social Security, really important decision for each of us to make. And if you wait longer till you're 70, you get more payment from the government, but you had to spend your money from 62 to 70. If you take it at 62 and you die early, your spouse gets less. So what do you do? What do you do? And that's why this is so individualized about which way to approach this. It depends on what you need. It's you. Yeah, I don't have to say our clients. It's you, whether you're clients or not. Another thing that's really important is the 5 years before and after retirement is called the red zone. I don't remember who said that in the paycheck. I don't remember the referral of who came up with that. But it's critical. This is when things can go wrong and have the biggest negative impact on you, is this red zone. So the success of your retirement can often depend on how much guaranteed income you have, and have you taken key risks off the table. I'll just say this as an aside. I have a client that we protected all of their income that they wanted and needed, and so when the markets were volatile, they didn't really care. They just lived their life and had a good time. It's a position of strength, right? Anyway, so this is a great picture. The main purpose of guaranteed income is to minimize these key retirement risks, and Mike just talked about long-term care risk in great detail, so you're up to date on that one. Longevity risk. What if you live longer than your pile of money can support? What if the market doesn't perform as expected? What if you're taking too big a withdrawal rate against what your portfolio is able to generate? What if you do the wrong investment? Any of you all remember the Facts of Life TV show in the 80s? Remember Blair, Lisa Whelchel? Well, she put all of her money she made from that, got talked into putting into a real estate thing, development in Southern California, whatever. And 20 years ago, she didn't have any money. She was riding around the country in an RV with her husband and homeschooling her 4 kids because it didn't work out. Anyway. There's another story about Kevin Bacon, but oh yeah, Bernie Madoff. Okay, moving on. So, inflation risk. What if inflation's higher than anticipated? We've seen some of that lately. And then the sequence of returns risk. So, from this list, which one you think is the number one risk?
There might be a prize involved. Somebody has to answer.
Yeah?
I'm going to say the investment mistake risk.
That's a big one if you do make the wrong decision, yeah.
Long term.
Good to think about it. Let's see what it says, right? You ready? Longevity. Why? Why? It multiplies the chance the others happen. That's why. that picture. Oh my goodness. So yeah, if you can take longevity risk off the table, then you'll be in a much better spot. So what are ways to do that with your retirement income, your investments? Well, you can do an income annuity. It's a contract with an insurance company. They promise to pay you. Social Security, the government promises to pay you. A pension, the business you worked for promises to pay you, or their pension company. Insurance company, you can buy your own pension. They promise to pay you for a guaranteed period or your lifetime, which is what we were talking about. You can, this is a promise to pay a CD, right? It's a promise of the bank to pay you, backed by the FDIC. So you could ladder out CDs for your expected life expectancy. Sorry, Department of Redundancy Department, y'all remember that one? But you can do that, and they're not guaranteed, but very secure. Government zero coupon bonds. We just had a client a few months ago, liked interest rate environment, laddered out 26 years of their expected income, including inflation, expected inflation, to lock it in, thinking these are good rates, best I'm going to see the rest of my life, let's do it. So anyway, and this is also not guaranteed, but you can add tactical investment risk management to your approach to try to avoid the catastrophes in that red zone and outside of it. So sequence of return risk, this is big, and most people don't get this. A lot of advisors, I started with American Express Financial Advisors in '99 in the DC area, escaped DC back to Iowa, which is a great place to be, raise my family. And then at the bottom of the tech bust, I left them and went to work with Edward Jones in Cedar Rapids and transferred out here to Edward Jones. So I know what American Express would tell you to do. I know what Edward Jones would tell you to do. I also know what a lot of other folks would tell you to do across the industry from being around all this long. So does Andy and everybody else. Anyway, what is not taught so often is sequence of returns risk to advisors or to clients. So during accumulation, the average rate of return is what matters. When we transition and start taking distributions out, what matters is something else, lowering that risk. So let's talk about two hypothetical investors. Investor A starts with $250,000 at age 65, potential retirement, right? Going out 30 years, pretty reasonable to get to, that's going to last, the money will last longer than the person. Sorry, it's not a nice way to talk about it. I like to say, what is your expected retirement end date? So that's what I do. Anyway, so this person started off and times were good. They got good rates of return at the beginning and bad rates of return at the end. The second person, it just flips. You see the same numbers? Same numbers. We just flipped them in different order. Bad rates of return at the beginning, good rates of return at the end. During a accumulation phase, which one do you think had the best result? I just did that mostly for you to think. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Withdrawals.
Accumulation phase.
Yep.
They weren't taking any income. They're just letting the pile grow.
Now this one's less happy when we talk to them today, right? So, but it ended up in the same place. So let's go through this. While taking income, same scenarios. Age 65, $250,000, we're back to taking 5% withdrawal rates as the expected withdrawal rate that should be sustainable with where interest rates are now and everything. And a 3% increase to keep up with inflation. So there's the withdrawal, there's the rate of return for investor A. They start off strong and it hurts at the end, but they still have $700,000 left over. Investor B, however, is drawing off of this pile that lost 17% and then 12% and 3.5%. And that's sort of what happened, you know, in the 2000 to 2003 and 2007 to 2009. So their pile got smaller. They're drawing an increasing amount of money off of it. And so they're done 16 years, 15 years into it. Nothing left. So this is why sequence of return when you're withdrawing really matters. So what we want folks to think about is that you have money set aside with reliable, dependable, protected, guaranteed, whatever words you want to use, income to cover your essential expenses, things you can't do without. And then your diversified portfolio can cover your discretionary expenses, your wants, and any legacies you want to give and have. And then, of course, you got to have your base, is your cash reserves, your emergency fund, that sort of thing. So you need to work with someone you can trust, that you can tell them and get to know all your business to give you the best advice possible. And it really isn't a do-it-yourself project. There's so much to know. There's so many ins and outs. That's why we know what we do, and we still work with specialists. You know, it's like your guests we just had. So what we do is we meet with folks, have a discovery meeting. We get to know your goals, what you want to do, get to know what your tools are to make those goals happen, and develop a plan for you. So that's that part. Tyler's going to hook me up with the next part. Any questions on that? Between you and lunch, so I'll keep going. We'll move quick. I got 3 minutes. I don't know if I can do 3 minutes. But RIA group, that's us. So we identified about 10, 15 years ago that things weren't working like we were told they're supposed to work, okay, in the investment world. I see some nods, thank you. So let's go back to 1985. CDs, whole life insurance, government bonds, this is, you know, the basis of someone's retirement and investments was that, with a little bit of, you know, utilities or big dividend stocks there, and maybe a little bit in high risk. Why? Well, CDs paid 10%, and the S&P was at 167. It worked. That's why people did that, because it worked. So this is important. So 1995, if you had your portfolio 100% in bonds, you could get 7.5% with a risk of 6. That's just standard deviation, volatility of the portfolio. By 2005, 10 years later, you had to have half your investments in equities to try to get that same 7.5% rate of return, and your risk went up by 50%-ish. Okay. And then 10 years later, 2015, well, you can only have 12% in bonds that are promised to give you the money back, right? To get 7.5%, and your risk has now almost tripled. That's harsh. You're just trying to get to retirement after working so hard. So the way our industry has approached solving this is to say, well, let's figure out if you are a low risk, medium risk, or high risk investor, and let's put 60% in bonds, but the rest in a diversified portfolio of different kinds of stocks, large, mid, small, value, growth, US, foreign, emerging markets. At American Express, we had 22 different asset classes according to a efficient frontier of, you know, this sort of stuff. It's standard deviations. We can put it all together, and it's a miraculous answer. And what happens? They all go down together. Didn't matter. Did not matter. Bonds went up. That's the red line. And in 2022, the bonds didn't even go up for us. Stocks and bonds went down double digits together. So if you want more return, you do have to take a little more risk. We just said, to get return, we got to have stocks. If we want 7%, bonds are paying 4%. So we want to try to have growth returns with conservative risk. Well, how do we do that? Instead of doing this thing with the diversification and the pie chart of different kinds of stock, we use different types of stock strategies and equity strategies in our models that we use. And I'm trying to be sensitive to time, so I'm going to keep trucking. All right, so we decided, if you also believe like us over 15 years ago, 10 years ago, changes here, the old ways of doing it may not work, volatile times, you got to have some protection from massive losses. Not minor ones, massive ones. That price matters only in the absence of value, and you want something different to happen, you got to think and act differently. So our approach, market often declines less than 10% 3 times a year and goes back up. It just does. It has a 5%, there are 3 5% declines a year on average, 1 10% or greater every year or two. Since 2018, it's been a little more choppy than that. okay? And declines of 20% or more usually only happen every 3 or 4 years, unless you get COVID, or you get the tariff tantrum, or you get, yeah, thank you. So our solution is to have a plan that's well-researched to take a meaningful portion of the portfolio and move it to cash and or conservative stock strategies when it looks like the risks are greater than we should be taking. And then also on the flip side, when a lot of strategies are good at that, but they're terrible at getting back in, is to know when do we need to buy with both hands, buy aggressively. And we had that opportunity just here last February to March, and then April, that last April, okay? So this is a chart of the S&P 500 from 2007. This was a 50% decline, gross, right? And the green periods just as when we were buying aggressively. The white periods is when we have a normal portfolio, and then we have these very brief periods that could be bad, where we go on defense, want to raise cash. When we do all that, we end up with this as a result. With our strategy, we could give the program to anyone. It's not hocus pocus, and they could get the exact same results. Okay, it's math. We've worked decades to perfect this. Anyway, this shows the yellow line here is the S&P 500. You can see it going from 100 to 400, whereas the area chart is our multi-index model of using ETFs to be in and out of the market, different kinds of exposure to different parts of the market. You can see here in 2022 where things were flat, and you can see how we bought the dip and it really rallied coming out of that dip. Right now, year to date, our main model that includes our stock models, if you'd owned it all year, is up 27% minus the cost of doing it. The market's up 14%. So here I was working at American Express, just got hired right here at the top, so it's my fault that the tech bust happened. And 50% decline. This is 57 from high to low. I switched to Edward Jones. Said, they know how to open and run a business. I'm going to go work for them. And they do. But we got to 2007 and 2009. We had another 50% decline in there. None of them told me anything to do other than have your clients hang on and buy more. None of the investment companies we work with, dozens and dozens of them, did anything to help us avoid the pain of 50% drawdowns. So I started looking for an answer. I started trying to work within Edward Jones for an answer. I could not find it within that structure, because you can have whatever color you like so long as it's black. So 2017, I was introduced to ABO Research, and Andy brought me to work in the independent RIA world, where we can actually take a big chunk of your portfolio and put it in cash if that's what we need to do for your best interest. So bear market math. You have $100, you lose 50%, which has happened twice. Okay, we've had 30% just in 2022. You're down to $50. And people think, well, I made 50% return, I'm back. You're not. You're only at $75. You need 100% return. So that's why our strategy is to just try to avoid the major catastrophic losses, not every little wiggle, okay? So that's what we do. There's a disclaimer. Thank you so much for your attention and time.
Thank you for being here today. We hope we informed and educated you on some of the questions that you need to address in retirement. Please reach out to me or one of the advisors that you heard from today if you want some more information to address your specific case. And again, we want to be a resource to you and people important to you. So thanks again for being here. Happy retirement.